One of the key indicators of a successful private practice is making sure that the practice owner understands their finances and that they have a good handle on how things are working within the financial side. And if you're feeling a bit intimidated by all of that, be sure to talk to my friends over at Green Oak Accounting at greenoakaccounting.com. If Julie and her team will do a free consultation with you to find out what your needs are and help you get started in understanding that whole side of things. Profitability isn't always about growth, but it's more about understanding how the numbers are working behind the scenes. So be sure and check them out today, greenoakaccounting.com. And also be sure to keep an ear out for Julie's new podcast, Therapy for Your Money, which is starting in late September. And so there'll be links here to that show in the show notes. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 145 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you're with me. Hope you're having a good weekend, whenever you might be listening to this. And I hope that you're staying safe and healthy out there. It's strange times. And the day that I'm recording this is September 11th. And so, of course, that's on our minds that particular day, those of us that have lived through that. And I'm assuming that most everybody here listening to this podcast remembers that date. One of the things that I was reminded of when I heard that on the news this morning, just, them sharing again things about it. There's been 19 years since the attack on the World Trade Centers and the Pentagon and the crash in Pennsylvania. And so it was a big life-changing event, needless to say, not unlike on a different level than what we're going through right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. But anyway, that's, that was on my mind today. Thought I'd share that. And I hope that we'll always remember those particular things. So I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest today on this particular episode, LaToya Smith. And I'm really looking forward to you hearing from LaToya. Again, one of those great people I met online, and she reached out to me about being on the podcast. And once I got to know her, I knew I needed to have her on the podcast. And I'm looking forward to you hearing LaToya's story of how she got into private practice, and which is a great segue, kind of tongue-in-cheek here, because that's what we're going to be talking about, is the importance of telling stories in private practice and how you might incorporate some of that in your practice. And the other thing that we talk about, and I'm so grateful to her for being so vulnerable and sharing her experience as a Black woman, just about how all of the things that we're hearing now around Black Lives Matter, which is nothing, the purpose of this whole movement is nothing new, but I'm looking forward to you hearing her story about that and how being a person of color has affected her, yet not affected her, that's not the right verbiage I mean, but just how being the person that she is, being a person of color, and how racism has affected her. That's what I was trying to say. How racism has affected her along the way, and just her thoughts on that. So it's a kind of a two-parter here for this particular episode, and just the things that we talk about. And I'm looking forward to you hearing from her. So, but before we get to that, I want to put a bug in your ear about an upcoming event. And it's just so happened this kind of took fruition here just today as I'm recording this. Met with my good friend, Dr. Dr. David Hall, who is the person behind Psych Maven. And again, another great private practice resource to check out, psychmaven.com. David and I are going to be doing a webinar in a couple of weeks from when I'm recording this. It's going to be September 25th, and you're going to be hearing more about that. We've set the time at 2 p.m. Eastern time, so that'll give folks in different part of the country to tune in as well. But we're going to be talking about making the move from solo practice to group practice, and just what we have learned so far, and things that people need to be thinking about in making that move. I think now more than ever, particularly with the increase in demand for mental health services and for the things that we do in this particular field, there is all the more reason to maybe think about forming a group practice, particularly if you're a solo practitioner. So we're going to delve into that topic. And if you, by the time you hear this URL should be live. Just go to practiceoftherapy.com/solo to group. And again, that's practiceoftherapy.com/solo to group. And that will get you to the registration page, and you can register for that particular webinar. The other thing that I'll just say about that all of this is leading up to is David and I are going to be putting together a business clinic. And this will be a seminar style clinic that for people that are interested in making the move from solo to group practice. And we're going to be just pulling out all the stops and just sharing what we have learned through our own practices and just learn from others along the way. David and I were discussing today how we have very different practices in the way we've got them structured, but both of them are group practices. And so giving you some ideas of different ways you can structure this and just things you have to think about in moving from solo to group practice. So again, I invite you to sign up for the webinar. That is going to be September the 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 3 p.m. Central. No, other way around. 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, and 11 a.m. Pacific time. So anyway, if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com /solo to group, that will get you to the right place to sign up for that. The other thing I want to just say real quickly is if you haven't taken a look at it already, we've got Killing It Camp coming up in October, first part of October. That's going to be October 5th through 7th. And it's going to be virtual this year, but that should not detain you from signing up for that and registering for that. And it's going to be a great event. I was involved in it last year when we did it live in Estes Park, Colorado. But Killing It Camp is a way for you to get a lot of information about running a practice and about starting a practice or growing a practice and all those kinds of things. So be sure to go over and check that out. I'll be one of the presenters this year, and I'm going to be talking about Google G Suite. The other thing real quickly before we get to LaToya is I wanted to make sure during the month of September that you're checking out Fall into Cash, which is being sponsored by Brighter Vision. And again, it's a lot of great tools and resources that they do during the month of September every year. And I'm going to be doing a webinar over there on that. So if you'll go to brightervision.com, it's brightervision.com /2020cash. And you'll get to take a look at all the free giveaways there and just a ton of free webinars and podcasts and presentations and that sort of thing that are going on right now. There's going to be a lot of giveaways and great deals that you can get from them. And speaking of Brighter Vision, during the month of September, for anybody that purchases a website, you can get $100 off any of that. And if you'll go over to brightervision.com /Gordon, and that's an affiliate link, just full disclosure there, you can tap into that deal as well. That's a great sale going on for them. So anyway, that is all the announcements I have. So without further ado, here's my friend LaToya Smith. This episode of the Practice of Therapy podcast is brought to you by TherapyNotes. TherapyNotes.com. TherapyNotes has everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. It's what I use in my practice. And now they have a patient portal that provides telehealth. It's a HIPAA-secure telehealth portal all in one place that's easy for you and easy for your clients to access. So be sure and check them out today, therapynotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just Gordon, you can get 2 months of their services for free. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so excited to get you to introduce to you or get you to meet a new friend, LaToya Smith. And LaToya, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm definitely excited. I heard a lot of great things about you, and I enjoyed listening to your podcast.
Well, thanks. You're too kind. And we were discussing before we started. LaToya made the comment that I have a pretty strong accent, and I just I'm taken back by that because I think all y'all do. All y'all and people in general, that's out of the mouth is what I mean. Anyway, that LaToya, I'm so glad to get to know you and glad you're here. And as where I start with everyone, and I think folks are just going to be intrigued by your story. Just tell folks a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yeah, so, I'm not originally from Texas. I'm definitely from the East Coast. I'm from South Jersey. And then I moved to Texas in 2013, and it was some adjusting. You know, to be honest, growing up in South Jersey, right outside of Philadelphia, I never thought I'd live in Texas. So I came here and worked my way up to, I was fully licensed at the time, but I worked my way up to being the clinical director. And then all of a sudden, the company just started making changes, and for some people, drastic changes, a lot of layoffs, some people getting fired. And by the grace of God, I was laid off, and I was given the opportunity to collect unemployment benefits. And ironically, a couple months leading up to that, I had 2 different people tell me, why don't you just start your own practice? And I was like, because I remember thinking in grad school, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do outpatient therapy all day. Mm-hmm. And now here I am. So I started the practice. I got laid off, and I remember sitting and not knowing what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. I knew over the years of practicing counseling, I knew the pieces. I knew, the little things to do, but I didn't know how to build a practice. And so I remember that first week, sitting in my living room, just, almost like vacation. But then that quickly wears off when you don't have a job or income. And it was, at times, to be honest, it was a little bit scary because I'm thinking, okay, I set up shop where people should come running in. And it didn't work that way. So a lot of days of just tears, a lot of days of pick up the phone. And at that point, I would have took anybody that would have said they wanted some counseling to come on in. Mm-hmm. And then here I am in 2020. I have a group practice. I started my private practice in officially first client in January 2016. And here we are the summer of 2020. And I have altogether, there's 6 therapists in the practice. We've expanded as far as offices. And I'm just excited. I never thought I would have been here in grad school. I didn't think I'd be here in 2013. But I'm just excited about how it's been growing.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. I think for a lot of us is just there's the twist and turns. We have kind of an idea of thinking, okay, this is the direction I want to go, and then things change along the way. And I think that's one of the things about it is you have to be flexible to those changes, and it's exciting. That's why I like to refer to this as a journey, just because I think it's just a lot of times we just don't know what's around the next bend when it comes to growing a practice and just all the things it can do. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it. A journey and not like my exact blueprint, because I never know how it's going to play out or what's going to happen. Especially like jumping to telehealth with COVID.
Oh,
nobody saw that coming.
That's right. And here we are. Yeah. So one of the things that intrigues me about you, LaToya, is just your use of story. And for those of you that haven't done it, I would encourage you to go over and take a look at LaToya's Facebook page, and remind me the name of it. My over 50 brain is drawing a blank of the name of your Facebook page.
For my business, it's LCS Counseling.
Yes, but the other one that you're doing of the storytelling part.
Oh, that's Strong Witness. Yeah,
Strong Witness. That's it. I don't know why I couldn't remember that, but anyway, she's got. I was sharing with her before we started that she's got a video. There's just to me, was just a very touching and moving video about your own story, but. Maybe tell folks a little bit about how it is that story resonates for you, and why you feel like that's important.
Yeah. Well, I started Strong Witness because at that point I realized, when I was younger, I was a victim of just violence, like childhood sexual abuse. And I had a story tied up on the inside of me about that incident for years. And because of shame and because of normalized secrecy, I was like, okay, I'm not going to share it. But then when I started talking about it, like when I really, the more I talked about it, I realized, wait a minute, that was too easy. Like, I almost got mad at myself. Like, you mean to tell me all those years I had that tied up on the inside, even after being a licensed therapist, and then finally just like letting it go and not being afraid to speak that stuff in front of people I don't even know. And I realized the more I talked about it, the more the shame went away. I got more confident in my voice. And then, man, people started coming up to me and wow, I said that, I experienced, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, like this, the more you talk and the more you share stories, it's this connection, and you realize you're not out on this island by yourself. Right. We all share in some type of way in certain stories. Right. And it brings healing, which is what I needed. It brought understanding. I think people began to see me differently and realize, okay, this is what she's experienced. Maybe this is how this makes her. Doesn't define me completely, but it made me more of who I am. So then I was like, I want to help other people begin to share.
Yeah.
And I had another name at first, but then I can't remember what that is. And then I came up with, the Lord gave me Strong Witness, just the idea of your witness and sharing your story, and then just the strength that we have in our voice. So now I do, especially every April is Sexual Assault, Child Abuse Prevention Month. I do something where survivors have an opportunity to speak and use their voice to tell their stories in their own way. Mm-hmm. And then I also just do little events like on Strong Witness page, you'll see like little prompts, and people can finish the prompt and just share a story, whatever they have in that area. So I just love the idea of being free and sharing and giving, just allowing yourself to be who you are and letting your voice just go.
Right. Right. As you were telling that, I was reminded of some of what Brené Brown has said. And one of the things one of the homework assignments I give my clients here lately, particularly couples, I think, is to watch the Netflix talk that Brené Brown did called The Call to Courage.
Yes.
And when you were talking about telling your story, I was just thinking that just puts you in a very vulnerable place. And it's also through vulnerability that we also experience courage. And one doesn't go without the other. And so,
that's a great point.
And so that's one of the things that impresses me about that. But to say more about kind of your big idea, so to speak, of just using story as a way to empower people and help them just in not only in their practices, but just in life in general.
Yeah. Like I was saying a minute ago, I love what you just said too about vulnerability and the idea that it builds the courage. And I posted something on social media, and it was this is the stuff that I love. It was a classmate from high school over 20 years ago commented. You know, you could be social media friends but still not talk. Like so, and so and she commented. She was like, "Wow, I really love this." And what she said just touched me, and I believe it was something along the lines like she read in the book somewhere. But it's the idea that, you know, the most authentic stories allow us to be seen, and that's how connection is made when we allow ourselves to be seen through the what seems like the hardest are the most authentic, you know. And I love that piece. So I love that piece where people can just let their guard down and just share as much as they're comfortable in sharing, but were appropriate. And then the more those words come out and they realize that they can speak, they realize that they can put words to their pain and their emotions or whatever it is. I just see them light up and then realize that, wow, I did it. You know, and then they're happy that people begin to contact them and say, you know what, well, I didn't know that about you, but you're so strong, or I loved hearing your voice there, or I get it now, or you spoke what I was feeling and I didn't know how to say it. Yeah. So, you know, that's really is my plan when it comes to strong witness and how to use it, to the idea of storytelling and the idea of connection. And I think also too, when it comes to so many disagreements, especially in the climate of 2020 where we're at in this moment, where we're looking at the divide racially, politically, you know, there's so much division that story can also help. Now there's a lot of help. We need a lot of things, but story can also help to bridge some gaps. Right. Because sometimes we have no idea where that person is coming from because we're looking at the you know, our own judgment and our own biases. But if we learn to set some things aside and learn to listen and connect through hearing somebody's story and their experience, I think that could help to tear down walls or to mend division. Like I said, it's not the only thing, but I think it's a big part of it that we need to start including.
Right. Right. Yeah, because I think, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I think when we're willing to hear other people's pain and other people's hurts, we realize that they're no different than all of us hurt and have pain points. And, you know, and some people have experienced greater degrees of pain and hurt in their lives, but that's also what disparages the anger because anger, at least in my mind, is a superficial emotion. It's what's on the surface. Right. But underneath that is fear and hurt. Right. And so I think by being able to give people a platform to tell their story, to tell truth, to the injustice they've gone through, to all of those things, that's where healing begins.
Yeah. I think so. And I wish I had it pulled up because James Baldwin has a really good quote to what you just said. And if I can find it, I would love to share it. But the idea, I agree with what you're saying. You know, sometimes we can get so heated and so caught up in being right and so angry. And sometimes, even though it is like that secondary emotion, superficial, it can seem so valid in that moment. But underneath that, there's some similarities. But unfortunately, we don't allow ourselves to get there.
Right. Yeah. So what has really been, this is maybe a little bit of a shift, but I know we had said we'd want to talk about this. With all that is going on with Black Lives Matter, the movement that, you know, started, you know, a couple of years ago, really, but it's really been, you know, under the microscope here lately. What is resonating for you as a person of color right now?
I think the idea of it's with the understanding it's hard to heal. It's like it's always something. I remember when I was younger, I used to always hear my mom say that. You know, it's like a sigh. Oh, it's always something. I still hear her say that, and that's what it feels like. It's always something. When 2020 has been devastating alone. We're not even talking about the pandemic, but from Kobe Bryant passing. You know, I know that had nothing to do with like a racial division, but then we move on, and all of a sudden we hear Ahmaud Arbery, but that was months after that incident occurred. Okay, and then we hear a little bit about Breonna Taylor, but we're like, what happened? And then comes George Floyd. Yeah, and that was huge, and that a lot of protest happened, and then recently Blake happened, right? You know, his murder in Wisconsin, and it's just it's like you can't stop to catch your breath. And in the Fort Worth area, Tatiana Jefferson was murdered by police back in the fall. And it's just like, and it's so heavy, therapists or not, professional or not, educated, trained or not. It's so heavy to the point where you don't even want to see another video. I think I saw something on social media, like, here's the video police, something in California. I was like, I can't watch the video. I'll read the story when I'm in good space that I can receive that information. But it's so hard. I wish, people who weren't Black especially could understand just the heavy weight that's carried. And a lot of times you have to hear acquaintances, friends or peers who aren't Black, drop their hot takes on, all of a sudden they're the judge and the jury, what I mean? Evidence, and I conclude, guilt. And it's like, no, you're looking at this glimpse here, but imagine this weight carried, this systemic racism carried for years.
Right.
And then, I saw somebody, an old friend from middle school and high school. We were engaging on social media last week, and he was bothered by the NBA players boycotting. Oh, they're jumping to conclusions. If you look at the facts here, like, no, you have to understand they are tired. Blake is the last name. At that point was the last name we heard. But this is years that they're protesting. You're looking at a single video in seconds. We're not reeling it down to that. And so helping people to understand that it's a heavy weight. It's a lot to process. And just like we would say to any client, you can't, if you're still being traumatized, it's going to be hard to heal. So even and I've seen some posts out there too, like, even Black therapists are tired. Like, because it's a hard seat. Like, right. you're supporting your clients, but then also having to take care of your own mental health as well. It's it's a lot.
Right.
It's a lot. And it's nothing, unfortunately, it's not new.
Right. Yeah. It's, and so, I think our tendency is we want to jump in there and help, but I think sometimes, I think we have to give voice, I mean, we gotta, those of us that are white, that have grown up with the privilege that, unfortunately, a lot of us have been unaware. I mean, it wasn't until I was maybe in grad school that I really became aware of, something that was there that I just was oblivious to. And so just becoming aware, and then also being able to call people out when they are also unaware of being able to say that, speak truth to those things. So, so thanks for sharing that, because again, I think it's all about vulnerability, us being willing to hear vulnerability. So,
yeah. And I'm glad you said that too. And I think I love the people who are not Black, or, be able to empathize, and for it to be, truly genuine. I had another good friend, and she mentioned she grew up in San Diego, and she said, I grew up around diversity, but I had no idea about my privilege until this summer. And then, her willingness to wrestle with that, her willingness to face her own privilege, and the things that she said in her past that just, she realized now just are not appropriate. I'm appreciative of the friends I've had that can reach out and not ask me, but just really, at certain times hold space, with me, and just chat, and willing to do their own work, and willing to stand up at their dinner tables or amongst their communities and say, okay, this isn't correct, or we need to look at this differently. I mean, that's what true, ally is. And we see things now, like, it's not enough to be, to say, oh, I'm not racist, but no, be anti-racist, like, do something to prove it. Don't just point it out like, that's not good. Like, we'll do, put some action behind that.
Right.
Or start certain conversations, or begin to challenge certain systems, especially ones that that you can have influence upon. I think that's important.
Yes. So, so what are you feeling hopeful about?
In regards to race, or
just life, life in general. Yeah.
Okay.
We can paint with a broad brush if we.
I think in regards to race, I have been a part of a lot of good a few peaceful protests. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like I was out there every time they did it. So a few peaceful protests that I went to. There was a lot of good ones happening in Fort Worth, but I know I went out and I see change happening. I see people and I see the diversity within those protests. I see more therapists, again, therapists who aren't people of color being willing to address these issues and have these conversations. And I have a lot of hope there. I have hope that people are understanding the power of a vote and wanting to go out and actually move and let their voice be heard. Again, that's all storytelling. Like there's a reason why you want to go vote. Why is that? There's a story behind it. It's why you're out there protesting. What's the story behind it? And beginning to, I've been a part of a couple events where therapists were around. I was asked to speak at an event where the therapist went out and educated protesters on mental health, which was extremely important because of what they endure. Because when you're walking out there, when you're really out there all the time, you don't get all the love back. You get some words back, and it can get out of control. So I like that. That gives me hope. That puts a smile on my face, and that lets me know that it's there's work to be done. There are people actually doing it.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that we had, you said you had started, you're working on doing some consulting and starting to delve into that. Tell us about that.
Sure. Most recently, I have become a consultant with the Practice of the Practice with Joe Sanak. So over there, what I'm doing is I'm going to be helping therapists, private practice owners incorporate storytelling into their presentations, into their social media videos, what have you. Again, I already mentioned there's power in story, but now I want to help other therapists and business owners be able to boost confidence in how they present and speak and be able to build and really reach their audience through stories. So we do have a webinar coming up within the next week. It's on Tuesday, September the 8th, which I guess, but it's coming up.
Yeah. So I think this episode might come out after that, but
okay.
That's okay.
But either way, I'll be doing consulting there.
Okay, awesome.
Of the practice. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. So if somebody's thinking about integrating story, I think a lot of things come to mind when we think about story. I was going to mention, this is just a little side note, and this is an invitation to you, LaToya, is here in East Tennessee, in Jonesboro, Tennessee. It's not happening this year, but every year they have the International Storytellers Festival.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just people literally from all over the world that come in and just talk about telling stories, and you hear lots of great stories.
I bet.
People talking about their lives and that sort of thing. But yeah, so as you think about integrating story with the messages you give out, tell me what comes to mind for you, and what is it that that's about?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to building a practice or building up a therapist, you want to tell stories that get people drawn to you. I say a lot that stories build connection. And if you're standing in front of potential clients, you want to say something that's going to resonate with them and get them to take some action. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying you go up there and you spill your life out like the most intimate secrets ever. That's don't do that. That's probably. And another thing, when I was younger too, my dad used to say, "Oh, he's telling the story." In other words, that person was lying. So don't lie about it. Right. Keep these stories 100% factual, but also allow yourself to be seen in that moment. Allow people to see who you are. They can connect to what you're saying better when they can see you. But when we present and we get behind slides that have 1,000 words on each slide, when we're constantly spinning off statistics and facts, we're not able to see you because now we're trying to keep up with what you're saying. So allow yourself to be seen in a sense, like, listen, be your authentic self, allow your voice to be heard, and just share.
Yes.
And I think I know people are drawn to that, and they'll want to pick up the phone and call you. They'll want to know how they can follow you on social media. They'll want to know how they can engage with you more.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you're exactly right. And in many ways, those of us in this field, one of the big things that just kind of intimidates, I think, people so much is is just the idea of marketing. But really, like you're saying, is learning to tell the story is how you connect with people. But also, it does what we do naturally, and that is build relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear a story and I can connect with the main character of that story or whatever, that's what draws people in.
Yeah, and that's it right there. Draws people in, and people want to know. Like if you can tie in that struggle with the emotion and get them connected in that moment. Again, we're not making anything up, but let them know your pain point or your struggle. Like, yeah, I could have went in deeper about starting a business on unemployment check. Like when it's hard and you open your door and you want people to come running in. Like, I want counseling. Like, nobody did that,
Right.
But then having to rev up and then to reach a space where, like, wow, I didn't think I would be here. If you told me those tears that I cried would equate to this, I wouldn't have believed you,
Right.
So having people hear the struggle, because people, like we said a minute ago, they can connect with that emotion. They can connect, like any movie. That's what ties in. We want to watch more. It's like we're rooting, you know what I mean, for the main character, or we hate this one person. That's how you know they did a good job acting. And that helps to pull people in and gets them connected. Now imagine that, painting that picture and then taking that away and then doing a slide with a bunch of bullet points and words. Like you lose people, or you can draw them in.
Right. Yeah. So, well, LaToya, I want to be respectful of your time, and I wish we could. I wish we could just spend time, sit down, and break bread and have a coffee and all that kind of stuff. Would be so much fun. But tell folks a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you, and maybe some parting thoughts of what you feel is important for people to hear in terms of story. Yeah.
Sure. In regards to story, I would just encourage people to use their authentic voice. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to present like anybody else. Tell the stories that you're comfortable with. And the more you tell them, the more confident that you'll get. Remember, stories build connections. So find those stories that you want to share and use your authentic voice in doing so. I would definitely, in regards to like racial justice and the climate that's going on, again, share stories and give your experiences. Sometimes, we're all guilty of it. I've been guilty of it too. We want to drive a point so hard. We just want to shoot. We just want to spit out facts. And this is how I feel. And that's it. And you should understand. But sometimes when we can put a story to that to help somebody else, understand this is what's going on for me. This is why I felt this way. This is why I feel tired and overwhelmed. That can be a better connector. And then for people, they can always find me. Again, the name of the practice is LCS Counseling and Consulting Agency. I'm in Fortworth, Texas. You can find me on social media. Instagram is LCS_counseling, and Facebook is LCS Counseling and Consulting Agency. So, would love for you to go look, connect. If you have any questions, just connect me on there.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll have all that in the show notes and show summary for people to connect and get to it easily. So, there was something else you said that just reminded me. It's just when in regards to story, I think one of the things about it that is so powerful, and we say, I know this is true just in my work with couples, and is when people can share their inner world and it be treated with kindness and compassion, that again is where healthy relationships come from, is to be able to do that, to put those things out there. And the other thing I was reminded of is there's a quote that I love. It's by a guy by the name of Alan Wolfelt, and he's a grief specialist, thanatologist, whatever, does grief work. And he talked about grief shared equals grief diminished. And so I think you could take that word grief and substitute any negative emotion in there and say that shared
That's good.
equals that diminished. And so, so I love I love the message you're putting out there, LaToya, and I love what you're doing. And just thanks for being on here and being vulnerable and sharing part of your life with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, same for me. So take care. And I'm sure we'll do it again.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed hearing from LaToya. I know it just I was very touched by her vulnerability and just the fact that she was willing to share some of the pain that she's been through, and also recognizing the pain of others just with the systemic racism that's gone on for years, but also just the importance of being able to just tell your story. And yeah, I found that really valuable for me personally, and I hope you feel the same. And again, big thanks to LaToya for being on the podcast, and be sure to check out her resources and what she's got going on. Again, you can get to that by going to her counseling website, which is LCS Counseling, but it's the URL is lcscac.com. And then also, if you'll check out her Facebook page and her page on Instagram called Strong Witness, and just be sure to check out her resources. So, again, special thanks to LaToya for being on the podcast. And I'm glad she shared what she shared. I think it was very, very meaningful for me. So be sure also to check out today's sponsors for the podcast. Green Oak Accounting. If you need to go over to greenoakaccounting.com and give them a call and talk to the folks over there. Julie Harris and her team will do a free consultation with you and help you figure out what you need to know about your financial side of your practice. They will help you learn how to be more profitable and also just be able to make sure that you're looking at your numbers in the correct way. So be sure and check them out, greenoakaccounting.com. And our other sponsor for today's podcast is TherapyNotes. TherapyNotes.com, and they're who I use in my practice. They are the #1 electronic health record system for therapists and counselors, and I couldn't do without them in my practice. And if you'll go to therapynotes.com, and then if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months of their services for free. And also be sure to check out the upcoming webinar that I'm putting on with my friend Dr. David Hall. And you can find out more about that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/solo-to-group. And that's what the topic of the webinar is going to be. And you're going to be hearing more and more from us around that topic. So be sure to check that out. And as always, check out all the resources that I've got on practiceoftherapy.com. And I've got the free private practice startup guide if you haven't gotten that already. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. We're on most all the major podcatchers now, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music now. So that was pretty cool. So be sure and subscribe and leave us a review and rate us. That just helps other people find us. So take care, folks. I hope you're staying safe and healthy out there, and we'll be talking with you again next week on the Practice of Therapy podcast. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.